Verses 6 and 7. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy as enduring as the grave. Love flashes like fire, the brightest kind of flame. Many waters cannot quench love, nor can rivers drown it. If a man tried to buy love with all his wealth, his offer would be utterly scorned.
There was a speaker at a women's club, and she was lecturing on marriage, and she asked all the ladies in the room, how many of you have wanted to mother your husbands? And one lady in the back raised her hand, and she said, you wanted to mother your husband? She said, oh, I thought you said smother my husband. So many marriages struggle, right? Now, see, I always evaluate my jokes after I do them, don't I? So last week, I told you one that Ann didn't think would be very funny, my wife Ann, and you guys laughed like crazy. That one she thought was hilarious, and it was a meager smattering there of, something's wrong with your laugh meter, Ann. It's got to be broken. Not going that road anymore. All right. So we struggle in our marriages often. What is it that makes for real love? What is it what is the essence of love? Well, here's in a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, he tried to explain that real love doesn't come from God. Instead, love is just a bunch of chemical reactions in your brain. Here's what the article says. Valentine's Day is here, so get ready to send and receive heart-shaped chocolates and cards decorated with big red hearts. But wait a minute, not so fast. Neuroscience has discovered that the heart has very little to do with romance. For accuracy, you should send your main squeeze a Valentine's Day card with the image of a squishy gray blob evocative of a rotting cauliflower, the brain. Because that's where romance really resides. And instead of saying, I love you, the knowledgeable lover would say, darling, dopamine floods my caudate nucleus every time I look at you. That's sexy right there. That'll get you points. Love and attraction are all tangled in the convoluted wiring of the brain. So what is love? It continues. Neuroscience tells us that love is a condition involving neurons, neurotransmitters, hormones, receptors, and circuits in your brain. Cognitive science defines passionate love as an elevated activity in the brain pathways which causes feelings of euphoria, strong motivation, and heightened energy, which can induce sleeplessness, loss of appetite, and obsessive thinking about the beloved. They've reduced it to neurons. Is that what love is? Well, I think clearly as we've looked at the Song of Solomon for the last number of weeks, we know that it's way more than just something that happens in our brains. The Bible says that God is love and all love flows from Him. It's derivative, and married love is a reflection of God's love, specifically Jesus' love for the church, of course. So our passage this morning talks about love as a seal. It says in verse 6, set me up as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. So what does it mean to be a seal on your heart? Well, today we worry about identity theft, somebody stealing your social security number, or especially stealing your credit card numbers, and then they can use them. Just recently, there were some charges that appeared on my credit card, my church credit card in San Diego, and I didn't use those. So we had to cancel it out, and we had to get another card issue. Probably this has happened to you multiple times. The credit card companies are used to this. But it's way worse when somebody steals your identity, gets your social security number, and then they can use it to impersonate you and open new accounts in your name. That's scary stuff. Well, in the ancient Near East, in this time in Israel, that identity was wrapped up in your seal. If someone stole your seal, then they could steal your identity. Here's what the Lexham Bible Dictionary says what a seal is. It's a small engraved object used to make an image in soft clay or wax, indicating ownership, authority, or authenticity, much like a modern signature. So it could have been a gem of some kind or something that was carved out. You would write a letter, you would fold it over, and at the crease or at the place that's open, you would put wax or clay on it, and then you would imprint your seal on it, and that would show that that was from you. It was much like a modern signature works today. Your seal was your identity. So what is she saying here to her husband? She is saying, and we know now they're married, the marriage has been consummated, and now they're together. And she's saying this, put me as a seal on your arm and on your heart, both inside and out, on the outside on your arm and on the inside on your heart. Your whole being, put me, my identity, in you as a seal. With your whole person, she's talking about belonging. You own me. You own me. That's what she's saying. We don't like that. We don't like the ownership thing. I could think of two ways that we don't like that ownership thing in our culture. We reject the whole idea of this ownership thing. We have a long, sordid, angry, nasty history of people owning people. Ann and I went yesterday to see that movie, Harriet, about Harriet Tubman freeing slaves, running away, going north, trying to get them free. So this idea of ownership is touchy for us. We don't like that idea, but that's not what it's talking about here. Another way our culture doesn't like this is because it sounds sexist. It sounds like male chauvinism. What? The man owns the woman? Is that what we're saying here? We don't like that at all, especially now in our Me Too movement and all these kinds of things. It just sounds like sexism, but that's not what it's referring to either. See, this is a voluntary slavery. It's, I give myself to you, and it really is on the part of both people. I'm not my own, I'm yours. You're not your own, you are mine. We belong to one another. So on the woman's part, this is what she's saying. I trust you. I love you. I will go where you go. Your life is my life. Your joy is my joy. Your well-being is my great priority. I am no longer my own, but I belong to you. Ladies, are you saying this to your husbands? That could be scary. On the man's part, she's been placed as a seal on his heart, which means that she is now part of him. That's what it says in the book of Genesis. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. She becomes his very flesh, which means that just as he would protect himself from evil, he protects his wife from evil. Just as he would do whatever is necessary to flourish, so he does whatever is necessary for his wife to flourish. She is part of him. When she is in pain, he is in pain. When she has concerns, he has concerns. When she speaks, he listens. When she is sad, he is sad. When she is full of joy, he is full of joy. She is his life. Men, are you doing that with your wives? You see how this works with one another? I belong to you. My way isn't as important as my being with you. This is on both of their parts, a little different in the roles, but it's the same thing. See, this is the implication of her being a seal on his heart. It's a voluntary giving of yourself to one another in plenty and in want, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, in tough times and in good times, in danger or in peace. Whatever, you belong to one another. And this is a far cry from our culture's constant barrage that tells us that relationships are whatever you can get out of them, or that the other person is there to meet your needs, or that if that doesn't happen, I'm out. Very different. These are two completely different paradigms. You got to see what God is calling us to. We've been so influenced. We've been hammered by TV, by movies, by social media especially. We've been hammered in our culture, hammered to believe that relationships are about you and get out of it if it's not working for you. And the picture that God has is, it's not about you. It's not about you at all. You gladly give it up. And not even for your spouse's sake, but for Jesus' sake. See, love is not a bunch of neurons going off in your brain that make you feel a certain way. It's actually an action and a commitment. It's actually saying, I'm in it. Even if I don't feel this thing, I'm in it. So what's interesting about the passage is it talks about the seal, right? And then it gives us three metaphors. And I think that these metaphors really are there to sort of explain what the seal looks like, what it looks like to be united like that. So we have these three metaphors of death, fire, and water. Death, fire, and water. So we're going to look at the three. Death is the first one. In verse 6, love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Now notice it uses love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. So it's using these as synonyms, right? Love and jealousy. That seems a little weird, right? Love and jealousy. But first, let's look at what it means to be strong as death or the grave. Why death? Well, death is a part of life. It can't be stopped. You're going to die. As I've told you, the joke that Steve Brown always told me, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is you're going to heaven when you die. The bad news is you're going on Thursday. Nobody wants that, right? But it's a sure thing. It may not be Thursday, but sooner or later, it's going to happen. I've been with numerous people on their deathbeds. It's never a fun process because death actually came in with the fall and wasn't supposed to be part of what happened to human beings. But when the fall came, death became a sure thing, and people don't want to die. They fight against it. I was with my dad 2 days before he died, and he fought to breathe. He didn't have enough red blood cells in his body, and so he wasn't getting enough oxygen in his lungs, and he was just struggling to breathe. But my dad was a fighter, and for 2 days he fought, and he fought, and he fought, and he fought. But in the end, it got him. It was strong. No matter how much he wanted to turn away from it, it was strong. It was strong. This is the kind of power that love is. That's what the author of the Song of Solomon is telling us. That's what God is telling us. Love has that kind of power. It wins in the end. It can interrupt, it can break down walls, it can overcome all kinds of things. Just as death cannot be stopped, so love cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped. But then he uses this synonym, jealousy, for it, which seems a little strange to us. Jealousy is as fierce as the grave. Did you ever think of love as jealousy? We usually equate jealousy with something negative. We think of it as a negative emotion, something we don't want to have. So someone who is jealous is usually petty or wants something from someone else, and we put jealousy and envy kind of together. And you're jealous of someone because they get to do something, or they get to have something, or they are more popular, or they are more, a million things that we have jealousy. And we usually associate that as a negative thing. But there are actually two instances in the Bible where jealousy is a holy and righteous thing. One is where God is jealous for his people. This is all over the place. He's angry when his people run after idols, not because he needs some kind of adoration or he needs us for any reason at all. No, he's angry because he knows they're believing lies. They're running after things that are going to do them damage and harm, and he doesn't want that for them, and he's jealous for them, and he's angry because he knows they're doing damage to themselves. See, our worship of God is exclusive. He doesn't allow us to worship other gods. That's why the whole Old Testament is full of this imagery, not just imagery where the Israelites were running after other gods and he was punishing them to draw them back because it's so damaging, and we're not that different. We run after other gods all the time, all over the place, and he draws us back and he makes us go through circumstances. Why? Because he's a jealous God. It's right and it's holy. It's for our good. And then the second instance is right here. It's the jealousy of married love. It's not different from God's jealousy for us. Because marriage is a commitment for life. No one has the right to share love with your spouse, to flirt with them, to have ulterior motives with them. You have every right to be jealous of your exclusivity, and you should protect that. You have every right to be jealous in that way. Adultery, emotional affairs, or any kind of sexual tension like that with someone who is not your spouse is damaging, and you should be jealous to protect that. Marriage is exclusive. That's the message of the book of Song of Solomon. It is absolutely exclusive. Number 2, fire. Verse 6 again. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. In a sense, that's what this whole book has been about, right? Fiery passion of love. I mean, it's, if we started reciting some of these things to our spouses, they would call us cheesy, probably. I mean, it's just fiery passion, and, that's what the whole book really is about. But here's the thing about the Song of Solomon. If we didn't have the Song of Solomon, we might think that marriage is just a contract or just something to have kids with or just a way to share the chores. We might think of it as, have you ever seen the musical Fiddler on the Roof? And there's a spot in there, Ian Duguid in his commentary describes it this way. In that musical, reflecting on 25 years of marriage, Tevi asks his wife Goldie if she loves him. In response, she reminds him that she has washed his clothes, cooked his meals, cleaned his house, shared his bed, given him children, and milked his cow. And after 25 years, why should they talk about love now? But when he presses the point, do you love me? She finally concedes, I suppose I do. Not a ton of passion there, is there? It's a pretty passionless marriage. This is actually what our culture expects of marriage. It's why people are running away from marriage. They say if you want to kill the passion in your with your partner, don't get married. If you get married, that'll kill it. I've seen it over and over and over again on movies and everywhere. This is the prevailing thought of the day. No passion, or if you want passion, don't get married. Don't get married. But the Song of Solomon completely blows this out of the water. See, marriage is not only a legal commitment, it is not only self-sacrificing, self-denying love, but marriage is full of flashes of fire, or at least it should be. Marriage is meant to be passionate. So how's the passion in your marriage? Are you tired of each other? Don't nod your head. That would not be good, especially if you're sitting next to your wife, men. This isn't just about physical intimacy, folks. This is about deep friendship where you long to be together, you long to spend time together, you long to share your lives together. In Duguid's words, friendship on fire. Friendship on fire. That's what marriage is supposed to look at. If you're struggling with your marriage, let me share the advice of Tony Campolo, who was a Christian speaker and author. This is what he says: I challenge those who come to me for marriage counseling this way. If you do what I tell you to do for an entire month, I can promise you that by the end of the month, you will be in love with your mate. Are you willing to give it a try? When couples accept my challenge, the results are invariably successful. My prescription for creating love is simple. Do 10 things each day that you would do if you really were in love. I know that if people do loving things, it will not be long before they experience the feelings that are often identified as being in love. Love is not those feelings. Love is what one wills to do to make the other person happy and fulfilled. Often we don't realize that what a person does influences what he feels. Since love is commitment and action, do the things that people that are in love and passionate towards one another do. I challenge you to do that this week. Number 3, water. Verse 7, many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. So usually fire can be quenched with water, right? Just douse it out. That's what we use to put out fires. But not only can this love not be quenched by water, it can't even be quenched by many waters. So there's synonyms to this word. Mayim is the Hebrew word for water. And here's some of the synonyms: rain or flood. Think about a flood, or sea, or river. How many times have we seen during the spring months, especially in the Midwest, where the rains come and the floods come and the rivers rise and they overflow their banks? And what do they take with them? Cars and houses and buildings and people, and you name it. People lose their lives. There's so much power in the river. It takes everything with it, absolutely everything with it. What about the power of a hurricane? When the waters come and the storm surges 15 feet and it just blows. You've seen the pictures, how it devastates a coastline. Or you might think about going to swim in a place where there's a riptide, and you go out very far and it can easily just suck you under and you'll drown. This is the power, the absolute power of water. It has so much power. Even that power cannot quench love, cannot quench real love. If we're waiting on it to be some kind of an emotional response that we have towards some kind of whatever that our spouse is doing for us, we will never experience this kind of thing. But if this is action commitment, no matter how I feel, I am going to act this way. I'll tell you, not even this kind of water is powerful enough to come in and break down that kind of marriage. And it says, what would you give for that kind of love? That kind of love is worth more than all the wealth in the world. So, those are the 3 metaphors. Here's the thing about us, brothers and sisters. We're not very good at this. This powerful love. I just look at my own life and think how miserably I fail at this. Last Sunday, I talked about doing the dishes together. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. Everybody says they're doing the dishes together. It's supposed to be something that's supposed to save your marriage, right? Well, I didn't go home and do the dishes with my wife. I laid on the couch like a beached whale, and it was really fun. And while I watched Ann do the dishes, so just confessing right now to you. After all, I work on Sunday, and I'm busy, and I'm tired. So I've got good excuses for that, right? Not really. I don't. So we struggle with these things. We don't really want to belong to anyone. We want to be independent. Our love is hardly as strong as death, and hardly as passionate as fire and hardly as strong as many waters. We've failed our spouses over and over again. We've been self-consumed in our relationships. They become humdrum. We've had wandering eyes. We've looked at greener pastures. We've been flirty. We've done all these things. When someone attractive comes in, we all change our behavior and do weird things. This is how we roll all the time. How can we change this and be people that are committed the way we're supposed to be committed? Well, what I think we have here in this passage is really far beyond just what a husband and wife are supposed to do and love in one another. This is actually a description of God's love for us. This is an absolute picture of what He has done for us. Let's just break it down very quickly. First, His love is not as strong as death. It's much, much stronger. It's much, much stronger. When He went to the cross, when Jesus went to the cross for you and me, He actually conquered death. That death no longer had any hold over Him. And that's why Paul declares, "O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." You see, He won the victory over death. His jealousy for us is stronger than the grave. His jealousy for us is so strong that He came and He was beaten and He was crushed and He was bruised and He was marred beyond all recognition so that He could take our punishment on Himself. That is love that absolutely transcends death. Totally more powerful than death. So we got to see that. Second, His love has more than flashes of fire. His love is fire itself. There is this passage in the book of Daniel. It says, "As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the court sat in judgment, and the books were opened." It's this fire coming from the throne when He's going to have His judgment. I don't think we like that picture too much. That's nasty fire, it feels like to us. Whoa, He's going to judge us. And we know from Deuteronomy 4 that He says, "For the Lord your God is a consuming fire," a jealous God, a jealous God. He is very fire Himself. You know what's amazing about all that? That judgment that He's going to do against sin. All that fire, that flashes of fire, God the Father threw out against His own Son, Jesus, on the cross in our place. All the judgment, all the reason, the way we have wandered, the way we have not loved well, the way we have gone off on our own, the way we have thought relationships were about us, the way we have been entitled, the way we have sought our own way in our relationships, all these things that go directly against what He's asked us to do, all of that was punished on a cross by Jesus in our place. That's powerful love. So we've got to see that, right? And then third, our God is more powerful than a raging river. It's one of my favorite Psalms. God is our refuge and strength, the very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea. And here, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling, the rivers are raging, the sea is raging. And then it shows a different picture completely, and it says this: there's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. In the midst of the storms, of the raging sea, our God will never be moved. He who began a good work, and you will carry it on to completion. You may live with guilt over past things. You may live with absolute shame over things that you have done, and you wouldn't want anyone here to know about them, and you wallow in guilt and shame. And he says, all of that got put on my Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, and so we're free. We will not be moved because God is with us. God is with us. See, that's real love. More powerful than death. More powerful than fire. More powerful than water. In his book, Mortal Lessons, Notes on the Art of Surgery, Richard Seltzer says this: I stand by the bed where a young woman lies, her face post-operative, her mouth twisted in palsy, clownish. A tiny twig of the facial nerve, the one to the muscles of her mouth, has been severed. She will be this way from now on. The surgeon had followed with religious fervor the curve of her flesh. I promise you that. Nevertheless, to remove the tumor in her cheek, I had to cut the little nerve. Her young husband is in the room. He stands on the opposite side of the bed, and together they seem to dwell in the evening lamplight, isolated from me, private. Who are they, I ask myself? He and this wry mouth I have made, who gaze at and touch each other so generously and greedily. The young woman speaks. Will my mouth always be like this? She asks. Yes, I say it will. It's because the nerve was cut. She nods and is silent, but the young man smiles. I like it, he says. It's kind of cute. All at once, I know who he is. I understand and I lower my gaze. One is not bold in an encounter with a God. Unmindful, he bends to kiss her crooked mouth, and I am so close I can see how he twists his own lips to accommodate to hers, to show her that her kiss still works. Brothers and sisters, that's what Jesus did for us. He kissed a crooked world by giving his life for us. See, real love is unquenchable. That's the gospel, and it changes everything. Let's pray.